Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bass, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and we're on a streak here. We have my favorite people coming in each week, and this week it's one of my all-time favorite people. I've known him since we were little boys together. David Michaud from St. Peter's Episcopal Church. Welcome, David.
Well, thank you. Good to be on here.
Now, Neil Nestrak and I, when we were like 12 years old, how much younger are you than me? What year were you born?
I would have been 63.
63, so you're 3 years younger than me.
Yep.
Neil Nestrak, the great late Neil Nestrak and I were having an argument one time about smart kids. And I promoted some kid as the smart kid, and he said, no, David Michaud is the smartest kid that we know. And I said, how is that? And he said, David Michaud knows the state capitals of every state.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the state capital of Nevada?
Oh, that would be Carson City.
See, he's got it.
Yeah.
He's still got it. So how are you, David?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Tell me about St. Peter's. It's one of the icons of our community. It's just so important. What's it like to be being given control or leadership of an institution that's so important to Salisbury?
The rector, well, it was an amazing thing to be called to the church because it is so full of history and just has been the center of so much great worship and great events. But to just carry on that legacy that it has had in Salisbury it's just really blessed to be able to do. Because it's been on the site there's been a church on that site since 1768.
Wow.
So there was a colonial church on that site. It was called a Chapel of Ease at that point because Green Hill Church down the way was the parish church for the Church of England at the time. But there's been a church on that site and worship going on since 1768. In fact, in 2 years we'll be celebrating our 250th anniversary of being in downtown Salisbury.
Now, across the street, Trinity's about to celebrate 150, but you guys have got them by 100 years.
Yeah. We're definitely part of the fabric of Salisbury. In fact, used to be the church was in pretty much disrepair in the early part of the 19th century, and so they sold a lot of the lots around the church, the glebe lands, to be able to do the repairs, which has now become most of downtown Salisbury. So St. Peter's was like the lone church up on the hill, and now it's surrounded by downtown.
It's such a beautiful church, and I would encourage anyone to go in there and see it. I don't know when you open it up or how that works, but it's so beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Well, and this is the third church on the site because St. Peter's has survived the two great fires of downtown Salisbury in 1860 and then 1886. So this is the third church on the site. It is a beautiful Italian Romanesque design brick church with over 50 stained glass windows. And it is, I would think, one of the most beautiful sacred spaces in Salisbury. And of course, we're open on Sundays, but we also are like to open the church up on the third Friday downtown.
Right, I went down there and had a hot dog the other week.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're outreaching to the community, and I know in September we'll be doing some tours of the church and some demonstrations and all too. But anytime someone wants to take a look at it, you can come into the office and we can show you around. But it is a beautiful sacred space that's housed many generations of people at prayer and worship.
When you say sacred, that's the right word, because when you go in there, it puts me in the mood of reverence and importance. There's just something very therapeutic about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it is a special place to be. I've started in the past year doing daily prayer in the church. So there are Tuesdays and Thursdays we have evening prayer, and the other during the day mornings we have morning prayer. And it's so nice. There's small congregation then, but to just sit there and be present in that sacred space is wonderful, and then have some prayers too. But sometimes it's just an excuse to just come in and just be present in this space.
It's a perfect place for meditation.
Absolutely.
And those stained glass windows are beautiful, and I love the arches. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Presbyterian. It makes me almost want to switch.
Well, yeah.
The church also plays a really important role in the community. I know you guys do a lot of outreach, and there's some work with people who are homeless there, where you guys participate in that program. Tell me about that, how you guys reach out.
Well, we are part of the group of churches that houses the men's emergency shelter
Right.
in the winter.
And this is like they go around from place to place. Yeah.
And we will house them because our concern is that nobody be left outside to freeze. This all started over 15 years ago when a man did freeze to death in Salisbury. We said we
Right.
cannot have this happen again. So we welcome anyone, regardless of religion. Just if you need a place to stay in the cold, come in and we will offer you a hot meal, a warm, safe place to be during those winter months. And that's been a tradition we have been working on for many years. We also participate in the Joseph House lunches and are looking for other ways to be active downtown in the community too.
Now, who are your parishioners? Who are the members of the church?
It's a very interesting group of people. There's some longtime families that are members from Salisbury. We have some young people, young families that are coming in. We have we are inviting all. We're an inclusive church that anyone who is wanting to worship in a more high liturgical style, which is the way we are, is welcome to come in and participate. And it's we looked at the geographical area where we come from. And just about everybody is from Salisbury,
Right.
Or from Wicomico County. So it's a very much people are interested and involved in the community. They're coming to this church.
Now, in my church, I'm a member of the Presbyterian Church in Ocean City, and where I from being a
Sure.
kid. And I'd love to be a member of the Presbyterian Church in Salisbury because I think it would be more traditional. But I know my church, they're struggling for direction, and I like the more formal old style. But you see these places like Harvest Baptist Church and the big churches where it's a kind of a whole different environment. How's it impacting what you all do?
Well, I think we have a particular niche of worship that appeals to people that like a more kind of structured, liturgical, traditional style. I mean, we have 3 services on Sunday. We have a quiet morning service, early service. We have a more contemporary 9 o'clock service, and then a very traditional organ and choir kind of service at our 11 o'clock. So we have, although we have the same liturgy, it's done in a particular different styles. So I think that's appealing to people that like that kind of structure, that like the fact that the prayers that we say are centuries old.
I like that.
That it's people that have gone before us and are coming after us. There's a real, I think, understanding of the communion of saints, and there's just some visceral feeling about having all the senses kind of involved in worship. So there's some that's not going to appeal to at all, and there's certainly other ways of worship, and I don't condemn that at all. I think that's wonderful the more we're worshiping our Lord. But for St. Peter's, I think we offer a unique way of worship. Now, it's not a way that's dying because there's a lot of young people that really are responding to that as well, and families as well too. So I think we continue to have a role to play with Anglican worship here on the Eastern Shore.
Right. Now, in the old days, the church would wait for people to come to the church, but now you see churches going out to the people, and you guys are doing the same thing.
Well, that's true, and I think evangelism is a big part of telling our story and telling people what we're doing and inviting them to come in, because we're in a time of post-Christendom, Greg. We, up until the 60s, the government did our work for us as churches. I mean, they had the blue laws. You couldn't do anything else but go to church on Sunday.
Right.
I mean, it was the societal norm. Whether you believed or not, you went to church. Now, we're in a situation where you've got a lot of other options. You don't have to go to church.
Yeah.
And so what we're getting is maybe not so much the quantity, but we're getting people that really want to be part of a Christian community. And I think that's a lot, and it actually harkens back to the days of the early church, where it wasn't the state church, it wasn't the thing to do. I mean, you had to really want to be a Christian, And so I think we're getting people that are discovering and finding real commonality and strength in being part of a Christian community. But it's very challenging.
Yeah.
Also, it's an interesting thing that it's church today is not like it was a generation ago in that people don't go to church every Sunday. But they believe that's our church.
Right.
And they're committed to the church and they're giving to the church. But they've got other things that they do on a Sunday.
And that's where I am. I go for all the special occasions, but I'm not there as much as I should be.
Well, and that's, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and I understand that. But people aren't abandoning the church. They're finding whenever they can get to church, it fills them and it gives them strength for the week ahead.
It gives me great comfort. Just even the social aspects in connecting with the people, getting feedback on the paper. I love that. It's really, really, really important.
And I think the fact that we have texts from a lectionary every week that we hear and I would preach on means that sometimes we're confronting some difficult things. So
Right.
coming to church may not just always be fun, it may be a challenge.
Right.
But we need challenges in our life. There are times when Jesus in the gospel is challenging us to be better who we are.
Yeah.
And, I think we can come into a worship and go out differently than we came in with those kind of challenges and that kind of strength and understanding that we can make it through the week.
There's always that moment where a Bible passage or a sermon, I'll be kind of like not falling asleep and not paying attention, but then it'll speak to me. It'll apply to something that's going on with me. And I'm always amazed by that, how you guys are able to do that.
Well, and I got to say too, there's sometimes when I've got a particular way I want to want a presentation and all, and I come and after the service, somebody shakes my hand and says that was great because that reminded me of this, and I hadn't intended that.
Right.
But that's how they took it.
Right.
Because that's how the Spirit's speaking to them. It's a bit of a mystery when you have sermons and all. But if people can get anything out of it that helps them, I think that's really cool.
I've always wanted to ask this question. I never would have thought of it. When do you write the sermon and how long does it take?
Oh my goodness. It's usually when I can. Sometimes I plan for it, and sometimes the things that happen in the week mean that I'm maybe writing it on a Saturday rather than say on a Thursday. But it usually takes 3 or 4 hours to do because there's a lot of sermon preparation that goes into that. And I feel obligated though to do all of the research and to do all of the thinking so that I can provide for the text more understanding, help open up what the text is saying, and then try to apply it to people's everyday lives too.
Right. That's interesting. Does sometimes it just comes, and other time it's harder to get out of you, or
well, I often will. I will read the passages.
like sermon block.
Well, sometimes they're a little harder to come through, and then others they write themselves.
Yeah.
But I usually try to look at the text earlier on, so it's kind of in my head. I'm kind of thinking about what I might be saying, but then also it's a pastoral thing because it also depends on where the congregation is too.
Yeah.
And I can look back because every 3 years we repeat the lessons. So I could look back at a sermon I gave 3 years ago and say, well, maybe I'll just use that, but I can't.
Right, you
because
can't recycle.
Because the congregation is in a different place.
Right.
The world is in a different place.
Right.
And so the sermon you give is for that congregation for that Sunday. And so it's an interesting and very rewarding a process.
And there's a topical element to it because I'll go to church, especially if there's like a national crisis or something, and I want to hear the perspective, how I, maybe some input on how I should feel about something, so I can manage it. So there's like pressure on that sermon.
That's right. That's right. Yes. I mean, you kind of have to think where is the congregation and how. It's a pastoral thing. I mean, how can I help this congregation? How can I? And oftentimes the sermon I write is the sermon I want to hear.
Right.
Because it's helping me, and I'm thinking if this is on my mind, it's got to be on other people's minds too.
Right. But you've got to be really connected to the parishioners to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. There's that, and connected to the world too. I mean, you can't be a parish priest and just be disconnected from what's going on in society because you're there to help and pastor the congregation as they are experiencing the world.
You just had your big event at Green Hill, the real Green Hill, and I wanted to get you in before that to talk about this, and I wasn't able to do that. But how was it this year?
It was good. It was a little less a little less attendance because it was hot.
It's so hot. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do that because the church, which was built in 1733, was consecrated by the bishop in the 19th century as St. Bartholomew's Church.
Wait, we should explain this. This is the big joint ceremony where the service where the 5 Episcopal churches come together.
Right.
At the old Green Hill Church down south of Quantico.
That's right.
On the way to Whitehaven. And they open up the old brick church, and it's quite the thing.
It's got to be. I believe it's the oldest church in Wicomico County. It's one of the oldest buildings in Wicomico County.
Yeah.
And it's it's original, so it's not something we can use every week.
Right.
But we come together. All of the churches that came out of Green Hill, the mother church, all the 5 churches, Episcopal churches of Wicomico County, and the congregations come together for a service on Green Hill Sunday, which is the nearest the Feast of St. Bartholomew, which is August 24th.
Right.
And so we have a joint service, and we then have a picnic on the grounds for all the five congregations. It's been going on since the 1850s. Because Green Hill Church has not been a church since the mid-19th century. They moved to more modern churches.
Right.
But it is the mother church, and it's one that we celebrate. We celebrate our joint heritage together.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful site, and it's truly historic, and it's worth the trip down once a year, I think. At least.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're hoping, now the Diocese of Easton has now taken, which is our Episcopal diocese, has taken ownership over it, but we are working to be able to have some local oversight so that we can continue to restore and care for that church and have a few services there, because it's consecrated church.
Yeah, I'd never been in there my whole life, and I went to a memorial service a couple years ago for somebody, and I've just blown away. It was like a portion of Wicomico County. I thought I knew the whole county, but I did not know what went on in there. It's just so cool.
It's a portal into our history.
Yeah.
I mean, you go in there, and there's that huge wooden pulpit in the middle of the church, box pews. I mean, just laid out as it originally was, as the colonial church in this part of the colony of Maryland.
And it's like when I'm at Chipman, when I look at the woodwork and I imagine those people with the lathe, like the real hand lathe, making this beautiful stuff. And it's the same thing. I can imagine those guys building all that altar and stuff down at that church, however many years ago. It's just amazing. Just amazing. So you were called to this. You had like another life. You were executive director of the Community Foundation.
I was.
When I first came back to town.
Right.
And that's a pretty good gig where you're able to help the community and you're very involved in things that fits your demeanor, your personality. But then something happened. What happened?
Yeah. No, I thought that was my call. Yeah. And that would see me through my career. But at the same time, I was working and doing all this great stuff with the Community Foundation, and I had a career in working in nonprofits. I was also doing all of these ministries in the church, and I had thought, I'll go ahead and maybe when I'm semi-retired, maybe I'll go to seminary or so. And I heard it from my Lord. I don't want your later years. I want your best years.
Wow.
And then I said, well, there's no way I can afford it, I can do it, all this stuff. But what I had to do is I said, I have to give up being in control. I need to take the plunge and see what happens. And I kept hoping that it would be no, but it was as doors kept opening, and I said, all right, if that's where I'm to go, let me do this. And I was very fortunate. I went to seminary up in New York City and commuted down to Salisbury.
And how long did that take?
That was 3 years.
Wow.
3 years, and then after that, I had a call to St. Andrews in Princess Anne.
Right. Now, you're down at little St. Andrews, and I was like, what's he doing? Because I was thinking of it like professionally. I never got a calling, so I don't know what was in your heart or your brain.
Well,
you did some great stuff down there with that church.
Yeah, no, I think we certainly increased membership, and we're doing a lot of things down there. And, I had been sent to seminary from St. Peter's, because when I came back to Salisbury in '98, we joined St. Peter's. And so I never thought I'd ever get back to St. Peter's, because you do not go back to the church you come from. I mean, there's just a lot of complications involved in that.
Right.
But I was asked by the bishop if I would consider going to St. Peter's, and after a lot of prayer, I said, well, let me give it a try and see if I'm accepted there, and it has been wonderful.
Yeah.
It has been wonderful, and we've been able to do a lot of things and grow the congregation and do a lot of programming and ministries. It's very exciting. So I never thought I'd be back at St. Peter's. I'm great. It's great to be here, and also I believe I'm the only rector of St. Peter's that actually grew up in Salisbury, because most people, they come from someplace else,
Right.
And so I've got that.
I think in your business, it's like sort of a destination. People want to get to
Right.
to that church because it's such a great church.
So it's been very rewarding, and also very rewarding to be back in Salisbury and to be back in the downtown church, and to know that with the Renaissance going on downtown, that St. Peter's can be a part of that.
Right.
That it's not just business, it's not just government, but there's also spiritual things that can be happening down in our civic center, and I'm excited about being part of that.
Now, see, you're like me. You left town very happily. I don't need to live there anymore. And then you came back, like
Right.
breaking back into jail is how I feel about it sometimes. What was that like coming back to Salisbury? What year was it you came back?
98.
98. I came back in 99. Okay,
All right.
so
yeah, because we were I was
Yeah.
In Washington D.C. working.
That's
working
where I
there.
was. Yeah.
And then came back, and my daughters went to elementary school and then up to high school and all. And it was a great place. It's been a great place to raise a family. My wife is from here and for generations, so it was great to have family there, and just neat to be able to be back on the shore. And it took me some time to get the job, but working at the Community Foundation was a great fit for me. It was also something to help. I mean, that I had been working in nonprofits, so I brought that kind of aspect to that position about how we can be strengthening the nonprofits in the on the lower shore. So, yeah, it's turned out very very rewarding to be back on the shore.
Now, I tell people that the Salisbury that we're in now is not the one I grew up in.
Right.
I mean, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, and I'm telling people too, because we're looking at our future at St. Peter's, and I'm going, we're in a place that's very different than for the past 40 years.
Yeah.
And where we're going and what our future is. And so, how we can't just assume that what has been happening over the last few years is going to be what's going to be happening in the future. But yeah, I do remember too how it was much smaller, no big box stores, riding your bikes everywhere.
Right,
and,
we did do that, didn't we?
yeah. I once asked one of my teenage daughters, I said, why don't you just ride your bike there? And she said, we don't do that. Like, it's a different time.
Yeah, we would leave the house Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, and not come home to dinner. No one knew where we were.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like they knew where we were.
Yeah. Or you go up in the woods and before the industrial park came.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a different era.
It was a lot of fun. So Jake Day and I have this discussion where he says, Salisbury is not Hess Apparel. It's not Johnny's and Sammy's. It's not the Giant anymore. It's the stuff that we think of when we think of Salisbury. And you go down to Third Friday and you're like, who are these people? I don't know these people, but they're the ones that are the new Salisbury.
Right.
So we have to tap into whoever these people are.
That's right. Oh, and there's new people coming in our doors at St. Peter's that we haven't seen before, and being able to be welcoming and do things that they're interested in doing as well is it's an interesting challenge to have. But yeah, you're right. It is a different. There's some different folks coming in, but they're coming because there's some things that appeal to them about this place and about maybe the potential for
That's
what
the
it
key,
can
I
be
think,
too.
the potential. Yeah. I'm just glad that you recognize that how important you are to that that overall potential. Being on the side of Route 50 that you're on, I think really helps, because you don't think of Trinity or Bethesda as being a part of the downtown experience the same way that you do St. Peter's.
Yeah, no, it has been part of the fabric of the downtown too. So I think it's kind of getting reacquainted, and the fact that we are involved in the Third Fridays and saying, come on up St. Peter Street and see where we are. It's a very interesting thing. We have signage that because we're right along Route 50, downtown. We have signage that says who we are on Route 50 side. We have nothing coming up from Main Street, from the plaza, from St. Peter Street. So we're looking out, putting some signs to say who we are, because for years nobody would come up that street, and now we're seeing a lot more people, a lot more traffic, and of course they're going to reroute Main Street, so there are more people going right in front of the church. So yeah, things are changing, and we want to be part of that fabric.
What's your advice for people who they want to be more spiritual, but they're kind of cynical about it, or they feel like they don't have time? What do you tell them to try to bring some sort of a connection?
Well, I think it's important to be involved in a community of faith, because I think that's something that helps challenge you, that helps give you strength, and that keeps you from being going out of left field in your spirituality. It's some discipline, some grounding. But you got to find the community that's gonna help you grow spiritually. If you're in a place in a church you're not growing at all, seek out something where you're going to be growing in that. I think it's important to spend some time, devote some time to that. If it's important in your life, you've got all these other things you're spending time with. What value does God hold for you? I think it's worth just trying to have a holy habit or two, and to see what is going to make a difference for you. But I think it's important to try to be in a community. That's how Jesus, when he left those disciples, he left a community. He didn't just say, "All right, you're on your own. You're on your own." Everyone's working together. And I think when a community is...
and they hung in there together, too.
They did.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And if you looked at the Acts of the Apostles, my goodness, they had all these different arguments.
Right.
They had all these people having different things that they wanted to do and all, and they broke, but they would come back and they would decide things in community. And I think that's an important thing to realize, that Jesus gave us a community, or communities, and it's important for us to nurture that. But also be relevant to people, understand how they live their lives. I mean, we're on social media, we're on, we are doing things at different times to be helping people with their schedules and all, recognizing that life in the 21st century is a little different than it was in the last century.
Yeah, I mean, people complain about social decay and stuff, but I'm not that alarmed by it.
Well, and I think in the Episcopal tradition, we believe that the world is good, that God created it, and things are good out there. And there may be evil lurking around, but the good will overcome it. Now, some other denominations find the world to be evil. We feel it is good, and that there's things to enjoy about it and to rejoice together. And so it's a nice... And sometimes people say, why are these Episcopalians having so much fun?
Right.
Because that's our outlook, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, too, that there's evil. We are working that, but we also know that life is good, and life is from God, and we seek out those good things that come from God.
He's David Michaud. He's the rector at St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Salisbury. He's one of those people making our community better every day, and I can't thank him enough for being here.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.